Ampire. Hey, babies. Hey, babies. Hey, babies. Hey, babies. Hey, babies. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Callow got his early Christmas present. He got to see Will Levis stink in person. And I got my early Hanukkah present. The Commanders looked like the week 3, week 4 Commanders. Been a while. These years are long. You forget how long they are until you're in the middle of them. Remember those games like in week 4, 5, and 6 when we were totally unbeatable and I was screaming, get people at the trade deadline because we could win the Super Bowl? We're back.
Last victory was the Bears game, correct? Right? That was the last game they won?
Last game they won. Let's see. They beat the Giants after they beat the Bears.
Giants. Okay, yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. But last home win was the Bears game.
Because that was where they're going to get over a Hail Mary, and they did, and they won.
Yeah,
right.
So last home win was the Bears game, though. And all I could think was, I couldn't go to that game because I ran a marathon, and that's over a month ago at this point. And I'm in a whole different world because they've lost 3 in a row, and things are different. And I went to the game yesterday with a friend, and I said, I'm not going to think we're back unless we score 28 points today. Well, first half kind of did that. I was very much back yesterday in the second half, believing in this team.
Full-on house party. Yeah. Whoop. There it is. That was back yesterday. That was surprising. The longer, it's so crazy. I'm so close to it. But the longer I do it, the less I know what to expect. Like, I did not expect 3-3 at half against Dallas. I just didn't expect that. And I also didn't expect 21-0 after the first quarter against the Titans, or almost 270 on the ground against the Titans. That actually is a really good defense. Like, none of this is really making a ton of sense to me. Dallas is missing all these guys, and they can play us close and beat us. And I thought, legitimately beat us. Like, I know the game ended up close to the end, but that game was lost in the first half a week ago. Like, they were just outplayed, outcoached, the whole thing. This week was shot out of a cannon. Can't believe I saw what I saw. This was, we were Coach Prime killing Oklahoma State. I mean, like, everybody was Travis Hunter. Like, I don't know what happened yesterday. So that was cool. We get to yell at all the haters. Oh, Jaden can't play in the cold, blah, 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 blah. I guess he can, because I'm starting to get the list of ridiculous things he's done again. Because, like, in the stat sheet that was supplied yesterday was some note about no rookie quarterbacks had that many touchdowns and that many yards passing and this many touchdowns running and passing weeks in a row. And also that list has started up again, which is really fun. Now we're not doing it in October. We're doing it in December. So all of a sudden we're back on the, oh, yeah, that Bo Nix guy's cute, but we've got the rookie of the year and maybe more.
No, 100%. And off of yesterday, too, like, he looked like his old self for the first time in a month, too. Like, making moves while running, knowing when to run, like, seeing those lanes. The Titans did the same thing the Cowboys were doing, by the way. They were waiting for him at the sideline, but he, was smart about it and didn't take any hits or anything like that. But most importantly, his passing was back. That was the best passing game we've seen from him in a month, where he was placing the ball, guys being schemed open again. It wasn't just all Terry, even though Terry had a hell of a day. We finally got back to why they were so good in the first half of the year, which was make do with what you got, but you got to scheme them up a little bit. And that's how I felt yesterday. But Jaden once again was like, all right, I'm good. Like, not that I had any doubts that he wasn't the guy over the last 3 weeks, but it was just nice to see everything was back. The rushing, the passing, the poise, all of it.
He is unflappable. This goes back to what was early in the season, which is where I got uber excited going, I've never seen anything like this. Like, he just doesn't look like a rookie. And now, after yesterday, and if you go back to the early season performances, and now that he's done it late in the season and it wasn't a flash in the pan, or at least a 6-week flash in the pan, then I think it's just safe to say and fair to say he right now is a top 10 to top 5 quarterback when healthy. Like, in the league right now, period. I don't care that he's a rookie. That is just obviously the truth. I don't know, like, I don't want to project out beyond it, because look at CJ Stroud this year. Like, he is extraordinarily up and down. I still think he's a very good player, but something's happened this year where they've caught on to him, and his play is very up and down. I know what their record is, but they're kind of like the Chiefs a little bit, except that I don't trust them in December, January like I trust the Chiefs. They're kind of barely winning the games that they win, and then they get rooked by a good team, and he's very up and down. So I don't know what Jaden's going to be next year or the year after that, but I do know what I see this year. And when he is healthy, and I think the bye week's going to do wonders for them in totality, he is a top 5 quarterback. His numbers show it. His feel shows it. The eye test shows it. Like, there were a couple plays yesterday. They were just, run of the mill or don't seem like that big of a deal, where he's backpedaling and throwing to a secondary target. Yesterday was the first time, and I've been yelling about this for a couple weeks. I think the offensive part that kind of dipped for them wasn't that not only were they not getting Terry the ball or moving him around or whatever the complaint was about him. I think they lost some of these secondary targets, and I think the defenses had clued into it. So they're like, bracket Terry, take him away. He's on the same side of the field. And right now, this offense, when we bring pressures against them, the ball's not ending up in the hands of the Olamide Zaccheaus, De'Ami Brown, Luke McCaffreys of the world. And when they were at their best, as Jaden said last week when he was asked about Terry, well, I'm going to put the ball where the defense tells me to put it, basically. You show me where you don't want me to throw it, that's where I'm going to throw it. I think that was lost for a few weeks. Yesterday, that was back. Brown got targets. McCaffrey got targets. He was just seeing the field better yesterday, and he looked like the guy we saw early in the year where we went, oh, my God, we have a unicorn on this team.
No, absolutely. And I think, part of it, though, what I would unpack from yesterday was the pass rush. Like, the Titans' pass rush wasn't that much, like, that special or anything to write home about in yesterday's effort, which I think in turn helped everything in this offense. Because I think it has been chaotic these last 3 or 4 weeks, where the offensive line has been banged up, but also dealing with some elite pass rushers. And yesterday seemed to be that mix yesterday where they actually held their ground a little bit more. There wasn't a crazy threat on the other side. And it kind of just helped the offense all around. And once again, it was just nice to have it reinforced that they were dealing with some adversity over the last 3 or 4 weeks.
Yes.
And it kind of caught up to them. Whereas yesterday, too, though, I will say this, we talked about it last week. I think we both were a little paranoid heading into this game, looking at the Titans' defense, and just to see them kind of just clean it all back up against them, like, the train is back on the tracks, essentially.
I landed on, if they're serious about making the playoffs, they have to win this game. Like,
right.
And the Titans were, I was paranoid because the Titans were getting better. Like, since Levis came back as a starter, his passer rating was way up. He had come off a very good game the week before where he threw for almost 300 yards and a couple of touchdowns. He's not making the cartoonish turnovers. He's still turning the ball over, but not the cartoonish ones where he's falling backwards and flips it up in the air and does something like the Jordan Poole memes from a year ago. Like, he wasn't doing that, so, and defensively, while they were giving up a lot of points because they were turning the ball over a ton and giving people short fields and all that stuff, they weren't giving up a lot of yards. So, there was a reason to be paranoid, but they are 3-8 for a reason. They're an AFC team in a December game, in a cold game here. Like, you have to win that. If you're serious about making the playoffs, you have to win that. And not only did they win it, they won emphatically. By Friday, I'm just like, just win. If it's 17-13, I don't care. I don't care how it happens. Just win so we get to the bye week. But instead, collectively, they look like their old selves, which is beyond reassuring as we head into the stretch here, because the reality is the path, thanks to the Ravens and suddenly very flappable Justin Tucker, for whatever reason, we can't win the division. Like, go look at the Eagles' schedule. They're not going to lose enough. Like, even if Washington beats them in a few weeks, they're not going to lose enough to catch them. So short of like a crazy run of injuries on them, they're kind of too big to fail at this point. So the only path is the wild card. And that path is very narrow because there's a lot of teams that are lumped up with them. So it was reassuring to see them look like themselves, to give me the faith that it's going to get there in the end, that 10 wins should be enough. And if they're going to play like that, 11 is very possible with the schedule that's in front of them.
No, it feels like they can now stave it off. Like, if they were playing like they did the last 3 weeks, and like, let's say they won yesterday 17-10, and it was a grinded out game, I would be bugging out today going, they're not holding off all of those teams behind them, or there's too much chaos that they're not going to look good. Now, all of a sudden, because they do look like they're back to normal. And once again, like this is like kind of how we reacted to the Cardinals game. We don't know what version of the Cardinals we're getting week to week, but blowing them out was still really impressive on the road. I say the same thing about the Titans. Yes, it's a home game you needed to win. You killed them. Like, you had them done by the first half, essentially. Really, the first quarter.
Carolina almost beat the Chiefs, almost beat the Buccaneers. Washington killed them when they played them earlier this year.
Right. Like, you're doing what you're supposed to do here, and then some is what I'm getting at here. So now down this stretch run, too, I think this team is going to have a little bit more confidence of like, oh, crap, there's all these teams behind us. Now it's just take care of business, what's in front of you. You'll be fine.
Yes.
You'll be able to hold off everybody.
I mean, the reality always is you can control what you can control, and that's your team. Just like as you look at the playoff picture now, like the reality is they're not going to win the division. Like, it's just not – the Eagles aren't going to lose enough for that to happen. They're not going to win the division. So, you know, the reality is the wild card. And, you know, as we were talking about on Friday, the NFC North is a lost cause with all three of those teams. Now, they're going to play each other, which will be helpful in the end, but will any of them lose enough? Like, we have to root for Detroit to kill all of them. It's like really what we need, so that one of them falls back into the category of having 5 losses, because that's like the only path for Washington to get like anywhere near above the 7 seed. That's why it's just very narrow right now. It was reassuring. All right, let me go back to the haters. Okay, the haters. Cliff doesn't ruin Christmas every year, okay? He doesn't. Like this, I thought it was, I didn't love the narrative of it. I knew it was coming, and I lived it back in the day when I made fun of him when he was the head coach of the Cardinals. But that's because it happened in the same place every year at the same time with the same players. So, like, you're giving the man no credit for evolving whatsoever, or, I don't know, working with a different group of people, and that it's possible that he won't repeat history. And the dip in the offensive production was not as profound as everybody had made it out to be. They didn't go from scoring 42 points a game to 7. That's not what was happening. They were not as good. They were, I thought, the real telling tale was their third down conversion percentage had dipped over the last month. They were among the best in the NFL through the first half of the season. They might have been number 1, or they were top 3. And then the last 4 weeks, they were converting at about 30-something%. Now, keep in mind, they played the Bears defense that's good. They played the Cowboys defense that's better than advertised. But more importantly, they played Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, who have top 10 defenses. So guess what? The competition there matters a little bit. And it was funny, like when we talked about it on the pregame show, or we talked about it here and other places, I would go, guys, like, you do realize this is a top 10 offense in yards and a top 5 scoring offense. And they were number 3 in points scored and number 5 in total points per game, because they hadn't had a bye yet. So they'd scored more points than some of the teams that already had a bye. I'm like, that's really good. And it's not sustainable through the whole year. You don't score 40 points every single game. It wasn't that bad. So this narrative of that it nosedived off the cliff, I thought was lazy. And I'm like, I don't think it's fair. And you know what? They got this dude's back. They had his back when they played Arizona. Remember, they were like, went crazy for him when they won in Arizona. And I'm telling you, they all heard it. And they can't even pretend that they didn't hear what they heard last week, because this team showed up yesterday on offense on a mission to prove a lot of people wrong in a lot of ways.
No, I think my favorite take with the whole Cliff, like people freaking out about Cliff over the last couple of weeks, was this guy. You guys were afraid that this guy was going to be a head coach a month ago or a month and a half ago, and now all of a sudden
we'll get to that because his name's linked to the Bears. I'm not surprised.
Right, but it's like you were afraid we were going to lose him 6 weeks ago, and now all of a sudden you want him gone. It's like everyone needs to calm down, like cool it, okay?
I can't wait till this fan base becomes not the hairless cats anymore, which they deserved to be for a long time because of what the leadership structure was, and there was a reason to be freaked out. Times have changed. Chill out, honey buddy. It's cool. Like, it's cool. Everything's different. Let's be open to the idea that everything's different. I think like early in the season when it was going really, really well, and we were all going like, is this even real? Like, what's going on here? Part of that was like, we'd been abused for so long. We couldn't believe we were being treated so nicely. And now it takes a dip against really good teams. One of those 3 is a disappointing loss, not the other 2. One of them is, if you remember the setup, They needed a bye week 3 weeks ago. They caught Pittsburgh and Philadelphia in a 4-day span. That's a bad setup for them. The only one that I'm disappointed about, the only loss they've taken this year that I'm like, whoa, I wish we had that one back, was the Dallas game, because that thing was set up for a bounce back and a win. Off a midi bye, your home, 2-game losing streak. They're missing a million dudes. Like, you got to beat them. And that they didn't, well, that's on them. And that's the one that I go, boy, I wish you got that one back. But the rest of them aren't. And then everybody just turns into the hairless cats running around going, our offense is dead. Our offense is dead. Jaden's going to freeze to death. Like, it's just crazy. Like, relax. We're going to be fine. Relax. Act like we've been here before. I know it's been a long time, but act like it.
I was like, you're talking to someone that's 35 that hasn't been there before. So over half the fan base hasn't been there before. They don't know how to act. That's where we're at this point. It's also, you know how this goes too. One, like, you have people that when we lose one game lose their minds. Two, okay, a little bit. Three, everybody, the crazies are out. It's the purge. Like, cue the sirens, because everybody needs to go. That's what happens when it's three. And I think I go back to one of your points. I think you said it last week or the week before. Or you must have said it last week after the Cowboys game, where you're like, this is the NFL. Bumps happen. Like, every team does this, where they lose a couple of games. There's a bad stretch. This team happens to have theirs before their bye week even hits, and they lose 3 in a row.
Quinn said it after the Cincinnati game. When I said to him in the locker room, I said, there are going to be a lot of people paying attention to you guys after this. You did it on Monday Night Football. You did it with amazing plays. You outscored that team that needed to win. That was an incredible atmosphere. We haven't had a win like that in a while, and it's your first big one here. And he just looked at me and he goes, don't get on the roller coaster. Well, the roller coaster goes down, too. There is not a single team that doesn't have bumps in the road. Even Kansas City, that has one loss, there are people, and they've won multiple Super Bowls, and people are going, that ain't real. They're looking at that going, that ain't real. Every week, they're the luckiest team in the NFL. They should have 3, 4, 5 losses by now, but they don't, right? But they don't. So, like, it's never going to be smooth, and you're never going to go 15-2. Okay? So get over it, right? If you end up winning 10, 11, 12 games, you'll look back and go, that was a great season.
No, 100%. I think what has to happen here too is you have to compartmentalize who was injured over this stretch too. Like, Brian Robinson was not the same until yesterday, essentially. The offensive line was banged up all across the board. Like, I think this is where it comes in of the, hey, remember they had to turn over half the roster and they've nailed a lot of those signings? Well, you can't nail all the backups too, where you're signing practice squad guys. Like, this is where really the roster starts to kind of take shape when you get injured and you can kind of get along with whoever you've got there. This is where I've kind of landed over the last couple of weeks is they got banged up a little bit. And there's just only so many guys you could have signed this offseason to clean things up, not to mention your key injuries. Like I said, Robinson was clearly banged up a little bit. Whatever they want to say about Jaden just hadn't looked right until yesterday as well.
No.
So, clearly, like, the team,
you know what? That rib injury was serious. It is so obvious now that thing was serious. And you know what you learned about him? He'll play through it. And didn't say a word about it and never used it as an excuse and never complained once. And look, he looks like all of a sudden in December, now that he's healthy, he looks like the guy we saw in week 4. So he was injured, obviously. But because we don't know him well and they're not sharing much, and why would they? They never told us how serious it was. But look at how he's playing now and tell me he wasn't injured 3-4 weeks ago and put a smile on his face and played through it anyway.
Not to mention, like, if that's what we're getting with him with, I don't know what percentage, 60 to 70%, I'm cool with that too. Like, if that's what we're getting, like, marginalized, like, okay, like, giddy up. Like, that guy, if he can play hurt like that, I'm all right with that guy moving forward.
Yeah, here's the other people. Terry's fine. Terry's happy. I know Terry lines up on the left too much. Oh my God. The last couple of weeks, I agree. They weren't getting him the ball enough. The more I looked at it, the more I thought this actually isn't necessarily just about him. I think Cliff got lost with the secondary targets. That what made the offense so versatile was the ball was going to a number of different players where they were supposed to go. And when Jaden said that last week, because he was like, I'm not going to get caught up in this. I'm going to force the ball to whoever. He's a great playmaker. We want to get him the ball, but I'm just doing what the defense is allowing me to do. Then I went, this is actually on Cliff, and it is on Jaden a little bit to reincorporate those people. Because they weren't getting the ball. So I think it was a very good reset week, and I loved the Terry chants. If there has been anybody who has deserved that, to hear the stadium chant his name, one, it proves we are very engaged with what's going on in the moment. Two, we love this dude. Like, he is, and this has been a privilege calling his games. He has been one of the best representatives of this organization, one of the best, most competitive players for this organization. I love the guy. And that was just incredible to hear the stadium chant his name yesterday.
The best part about that was it started on play number 1 to him. His first catch, people started chanting his name. And then every single time, therefore, after, they were chanting it. And then once he got that second touchdown, I thought people were going to go ballistic. Like, the way that crowd embraced him yesterday was really special. And look, I kind of said this, and we didn't really talk about this because we had such a short week last week, but I kind of knew the stadium was going to be about 70% yesterday. Holiday, bad team. That bad team doesn't travel. Weather was cold. Like, I was kind of wondering, what's the stadium going to look like off of the losing streak too? You know what? Not a bad crowd for all the things that I just mentioned. And like you said, engaged, like knowing they needed to get the ball to Terry to get this thing going. And yeah, I'm with you. Like, I've had season tickets since after the pandemic. And I don't know if I've ever seen a guy more universally beloved than that guy. Like, just seeing the jerseys, people want him to have the ball. When he doesn't have the ball, he's doing the right thing. I'm with you. Like, I can't think of a player in my generation that is just, you know, is as Joe Gibbs would say, super smart, fights his guts out.
Yeah.
You know, as he would say, a true Redskin back in the day. Like, he just epitomizes what this franchise should be all about.
Yeah, one day we're going to put his name in the Ring of Fame. I mean, he's just had a fantastic career here, and hopefully, far from over. Hopefully, overall too. I mean, the domination of the run game. I walked into yesterday going, I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball very well. Like, I didn't really know what Robinson's relative health was. Tennessee came in averaging, giving up 106 yards a game on the ground, 4 yards per carry. Washington had over 100 yards rushing in the first quarter. The offensive line dominated them. That is a really good front. Jeffrey Simmons is a perennial Pro Bowler. This draft pick, Tavondre Sweat, lists at 370. I think he's 425 pounds. He is an absolute monster. They are really fast on the edges and with their linebackers. And this offensive line diced them and shredded them to the tune of almost 270 yards. Chris Rodriguez, who has been up and down from the practice squad 5 times, cut because they couldn't do any more moves with him. Eckler gets hurt, he's on the street, comes back, and almost rushes for 100 yards. He deserves a lot of credit. The run game domination was something that was like early in the season. And honestly, if they're going to be able to somewhat regularly do this, this works in December and January. It travels everywhere.
No, and this was like, I think the shock of the day was just how well it was working. Not to mention, Robinson on the first carry of the game has the longest career. I don't know if it was first carry. You might have to correct me on that.
But it was the first run.
Okay, so first run has the longest run of his career, 50-yard touchdown run, and no one wanted anything to do with him as well. This is where what you were talking about earlier comes into play too. That AFC team, cold weather, on the road, they don't want to have anything to do with that guy once he gets a full head of steam. And so that set the tone too for me, like, oh, okay, it's going to be one of these games where if you just get Robinson the ball a bunch, they'll be fine. And then we've seen this before, though. When they get into complementary football, they can just start running the ball with whoever they've got back there, too. And I think you're right, though. It's been crazy that Rodriguez does step up in that situation, too, with McNichols there as well, who's been there all season long, essentially. The fact that it hasn't mattered who's behind Robinson has just been also really fun to watch. The fact that Robinson didn't play in the fourth quarter was perfect for me because that's a guy that they kind of go as he goes too. He's going to be super important for them down the stretch, and to see him dominate at first and be able to pull him, best of both worlds on that one.
Last thing real quick. Not that it's that I care, but Titans, what was your game plan? Have you watched us? Because Tony Pollard ran the ball 8 times. And I know they got behind early and everything, but they had creeped back into where it was a 2-score game, And I don't know if you've been paying attention to the Commanders this year. We can't stop the run. So thank you. Like, I don't know what in the world they were thinking. I think they just got behind and lost their cool and didn't know what to do. And once Will Levis is throwing the ball triple the amount of times that they're running it, we're winning 99.9% of the time, period.
Well, it's documented on this show. When you got Will Levis, you got to let him take over the game. So, like when you got that guy back there, you got to let him, start slinging it a little bit. I was a little disappointed we didn't get the Will Levis meme moment yesterday. We did get the suplex though, when he got suplexed on that one sack, which I loved. But we didn't get the like all time, like this is the worst moment of the week moment. I was a little disappointed in that.
The Jordan Poole chuck it like this up in the air and just see what happens.
Right. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, we didn't get that.
Yeah.
That's true. All right, be right back. Ray Washington Show is at 6:30, the Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. Buried in the blowout was Emmanuel Forbes was released. I am a little surprised. I will start there. I am a little surprised. I was asked, it's the first question I always get. Are you surprised? I am. I do, or at least believe the reporting. I don't know for sure, but I do believe the reporting that they tried to trade him at the deadline. And there was no, maybe there were offers, but maybe something they didn't want. And if you last week was very telling when Michael Davis and Benjamin St-Juste were rotating, okay? And Marshawn Lattimore, I'm pretty convinced, is going to be playing against the Saints in a couple of weeks. He was, quote unquote, close to going this weekend. I guess they determined they didn't need him, and in the end, they didn't need him this weekend. So he'll be back sooner rather than later. That's going to be a boost for this team, obviously. Forbes clearly has fallen out of the rotation because they're rotating the corners that are struggling, and he's not one of them rotating. So, I think they gave it the old college try with him. It didn't quite fit for them either. I was hoping that this defensive, group and staff who have turned corners through the years into interception machines would unlock that for him. It didn't happen. Clearly, his future was limited at best with the team. And you know what? Like, they're giving him an opportunity to catch on with somebody else now, as opposed to riding the bench and being inactive for the rest of the season, because that's exactly where he was heading. And so I wish him luck. I hope he finds his next spot. I actually think he's a very nice guy, nice kid, and I think he's undersized. And unfortunately, he's going to have to get a lot of interceptions to show value on the field. That just didn't happen for him in either one of the defenses he was in these last couple of years. I know everybody piles on Ron's draft picks. That's a fun narrative because here's another one. But these guys didn't pick him. So it is what it is.
No, with Forbes too, like I'm with you. Like, dude never had a bad attitude or anything. That's always worth mentioning with some of these guys. He and Jamin Davis to me were cut off the same cloth. Like, just didn't latch on, but still really worked their ass off since they got here. But with Forbes too, this actually is what I predicted at training camp. You can go back to our shows and listen. I thought Davis was going to be the one to bump him off at some point. I just didn't think I just didn't think it was going to be this late. And when it wasn't catching on, I was just like, okay, this is just the state of their room, right? Like, they're just keeping these guys because they don't really have any kind of, crazy competition going on. But now, this is kind of the crazy part. It's not just him, but we had Fedarian Mathis inactive yesterday because of how practice has been going too. And
that was a surprise.
And so now I'm looking at this going, oh, okay. So not only are we not doing the wrong thing where the roster is set week one, I know that hasn't been the case, but two, they're still competing throughout the season. It's just something that I'm not used to seeing over the last 3 or 4 years. So I look at this with Forbes, and the Davis thing just happened 10 weeks later than I thought it would. I thought he would be the one to eventually bump him off the roster. But of course, with Lattimore now, and now him catching on in practice, I'm not really surprised. And when it came to Forbes too, getting cut in year 2 of your rookie deal tells me they gave you every shot they could, but at ultimate, you just were not it. And I'm not really surprised at this point.
Yep. I was hoping it would work for him. The second they hired this staff, they turned Deron Bland into an interception machine. Maybe they'll do it with him too. And I think they gave it the old college try with him. I don't think it helped that he got hurt early in the summer and missed a lot of time. That seems to matter with this group. If you miss time, it's hard to catch up. Go look at Derek Forrest, who can't get on the field. He missed a lot of time early in the summer. So we'll see what happens. The Mathis thing surprised me. I saw somebody put out like a tweet with like the meme of the guy hiding behind the tree, and they wrote like any Ron Rivera draft pick is like hiding right now. So I don't think that they're like circling in on the ex players and trying to find them and off them one at a time. But it is very telling about Ron's tenure here that those are the guys that are not sticking at all. So with the I mean, there are some carryovers like Terry, who got serenaded, yesterday. Of course, he also wasn't a Ron pick, so I don't know.
That's right. Well, and with Mathis too, like it's not like we haven't seen it from him this year, right? Like he's actually had a couple moments where you kind of like, oh, like it's nice to see you, right? So this is one of those situations where maybe also like how I am with like hockey analogies. This could be the hockey analogy too of we're going to scratch you going into the bye week. We want you to come back on the other side ready to compete for the last, 5 weeks of the season. And that could be one of these factors as well. I don't discount this coaching staff doing that with a guy like Mathis.
That's right. So we'll see. All right, let's get to the other games around the league. Is it Penix time, playa? Kirk had a doozy yesterday. Vegas said this was going to happen. They made the Chargers favorites on the road at Atlanta. This was one of the good results that we got. We want Atlanta to lose because, the narrow path to the playoffs is it's going to get jumbled right at the bottom of the wild card standings. And Washington's got like a 2-game lead on everybody, but that is fleeting because they're going to play each other. So somebody's going to move up. We needed a result like this. Kirk was bad. Atlanta, I'm sure, is freaking out. And frankly, if they lose a couple more games, I wouldn't be shocked if he plays against us in a few weeks, but he's the quarterback for them.
No, especially with how close this division goes. And if Kirk continues to crater, because that's the word I'll use is crater, they are going to have to go in another direction just to try to jumpstart the team. And it wouldn't shock me if we saw him, to be completely honest. Their downfall needs to be studied, though. Kirk was doing Kirko chains in the first month of the season. People loved him. And now,
window dressing. You
had Joe Buck saying the Falcons' offense is taking off like a month ago. And like I've never seen a team just completely fall apart like this.
Nope.
Unreal, honestly. Unreal.
I never bought it. Never, ever. And the second they drafted this guy, I went, that's a really crazy thing to do. That's how you mind F the other players on the team when you do something like that, including the guy you picked. It's messed up. He's like a warlock that's just walking around the facility every single day. Oh, Steelers country. Let's ride. Russ threw for 414 yesterday. They outscored Cincinnati. Uh-oh. And now that Baltimore lost, they're cruising to that division. So they're going to have at least a home game. And if they can get lucky and get the Chiefs to lose one or two of these things, they could be vying for the 1 seed out there.
This was the game that stunk from Vegas over the weekend. Like, Bengals being favorites against them was so weird. And I didn't think it was happening like this. But I just thought sometimes you need to just, like, not overthink this. The Steelers have eked it out against a bunch of teams, including us, over the last month. Why would they fall to that team at this point in the season? I did not think it was going to be like that. And by the way, like, he's not probably going to get a lot of it, but Mike Tomlin should get some votes for Coach of the Year for all of the reporting of it was his decision and his decision alone that Russ should start while things were okay with Fields. They weren't amazing.
I would like to say I fully 100% agreed with it at the time, and even said at the time, look it up, that if they don't play him and don't find out who the right quarterback is for them, it's malpractice. And everybody dislikes Russ. That's all it was. And the whole time I'm going, Fields ain't it for them. You've got to play this guy. And if Russ doesn't work out, you can always go back to Fields.
Yeah, but like what I thought was funny was we don't see this often in Pittsburgh where the reporting was all of a sudden everyone distancing themselves from Tomlin. Like we don't see that often. That was a little Dan Snyder-ish where it was like multiple reporters saying, this is Tomlin's decision alone, no ownership involved, no off. Like it was everybody going, this is Tomlin's decision only. And the fact that the reporting came out like that, I think it should be treated as such. If he made that call all alone, which it sounds like he did, he deserves some votes for Coach of the Year.
Well, I love me some Mike Tomlin. Those press conferences every week, phenomenal. They're
Did
phenomenal.
you see him in post-game dancing with Najee Harris yesterday on his Instagram?
Yes.
So there was that.
Yeah.
There was that clip. And then another player, I guess, looked over while they were walking off the field in the locker room. They looked down, and Tomlin had a mic. And the player goes, "Oh, you were mic'd up this whole time." And Mike Tomlin turns to him and just goes, "Shut your ass up." And they just keep walking into the locker room. Like, the vibes on that team are actually, very high right now.
Right. Let's see. This was a good result, I think. Vikings get by Arizona. I think that's good for us. We want the NFC West teams to remain really jumbled so that only one of them wins the division and none of them actually get to the wild card, because that's what I don't want. Like this, I think it's a good result because after watching the Vikings, to get ready for the Titans game, they played the Vikings a couple weeks ago. So I watched them, and I've now seen the Vikings a few times, and I was not much of a believer without really watching them. And now that I've watched them, I'm fully in that they're real. Like Darnold is playing better than I think you could imagine that he would. Their offensive line's really good. They obviously have great weapons, which headlined by Jefferson and Aaron Jones. And defensively, they've got this faux pressure, you don't know what's coming thing, maybe better than anybody in the NFL right now. They got sneaky pass rushers. I buy them. Like I totally buy them now. So I actually think that this is a good result, I think, because it just jumbles up the NFC West and let the NFC North fight it out, because I think the Vikings are a lost cause to catch them. I don't think they'll lose enough. But Arizona, we need them out of the way. So I thought this was a good result for us.
No, I agreed. I've been saying this for weeks. The Vikings defense is what has me believing with them. This is how, people kind of forget about this. Before they went and got Kirk, remember they made it to the NFC Championship game with Keenum. But the reason they made it to that NFC Championship game was because of how good their defense is. They finally have gotten back to that, and Darnold is better than Keenum was way back when. So I look at them and just think, play good defense, toss it up to Jefferson. If they're doubling Jefferson, go to Jones. I like their makeup. I don't know how far they're going to go. I don't put them as contenders, but they're a team that scares me. They can show up anywhere and win with that formula. I've believed in them this whole time. And with them beating Arizona, I don't really know anymore. We're so jumbled at this point. I don't know what I'm really rooting for. So this is where I just fall back into Washington needs to just keep winning ahead, who's in front of them, because I don't know what they actually need at this point.
Jets blow it again. Thanks, Raj. So this is a win-win, really. Well, this is a win-loss because I wanted the Jets to win because it would help us, obviously. Yes. But watching Rodgers crater is one of the most enjoyable things of this NFL season, because he's just so unconscionably annoying that seeing them fall apart like this is relatively hilarious. And to throw a 92-yard pick six to a defensive lineman, that's chef's kiss. And to have to listen to him try to figure out how to even explain any of this post-game is funny. I don't even know why he's going on McAfee anymore. Who cares what he has to say about it anymore? They are the biggest blow-up tank job, worst performance of the season. By far, not close. The Bears are close, but they have a verifiable Hall of Famer playing quarterback for them. They were supposed to win. The Bears were in our boat. The Bears they might be good. We'll see. The Jets were supposed to go to the Super Bowl with this team, and they're going to have a top 5 pick. It's pathetic, and it's funny all at the same time.
Did you ever see the last drive of the game for them yesterday?
No.
The last drive of the game was incomplete screen. He threw one to, I think it was Breece Hall, and Breece Hall got blown up by whoever, was waiting on him. It was another incomplete pass, or a sack, and then another incomplete easy pass. It was the incompetence here is even worse than you can imagine. He's not even be able to do the basic things right now. And I said this in the summertime, when Hassan Reddick wasn't showing up there and the vibes were already starting to get weird. We've lived this where you got the quarterback, everything should be fine, but then you have players that don't want to show up and not even in the country. Things like that means the vibes are not right, and they never were. And we know how this is. Woody Johnson got involved, and all of a sudden they're falling apart. They're cratering too.
Yeah. When you're I'm not going to go to the mandatory practices because I'm in Egypt. Well, why are you in Egypt? Because I am.
Right.
Well, I don't think you're serious.
And then
sorry that I believe that, but I believe that to be true. You're not serious. Yeah.
You're in Egypt, and then Hassan Reddick is in Japan. I don't know. Like that tone has been set that, okay, we're not that serious here. Maybe we don't need to, work out as hard or whatever. Yeah. The vibes were off.
Rambo surviving New Orleans. I don't know. I mean, like that could have gone either way. I mean, both of them are kind of in it, kind of not. Rams have a better record. I obviously trust them more than the Saints. So I would have liked the Saints to pull that off. They don't. So that's unfortunate. Come on, Panthers. I mean, for crying out loud, they had them. They scored with 30 seconds left. The game was over. I was watching the Eagles-Ravens. I look up and they said, go to overtime. I'm like, what in the world happened? So that would have been, boy, that would have cleared a path if we could have gotten that one, but we didn't. So that didn't work out. Red zone specials. Colts beat the Patriots at the last second. I give them credit for going for two. I know we make fun of Trevor a lot, but that was awful yesterday, what happened to him in that game, and I hope he's okay. That was just really, that was terrible, terrible, terrible thing to watch. The 49ers, I think, are done. Just too many injuries. Doesn't look like Christian McCaffrey's coming back at all. They are a comedy of errors. Everything goes wrong. They can go wrong. They still have a very hard schedule. So believe it or not, they're not going to make the playoffs this year unless for some reason they somehow win that division, which doesn't even feel likely at this point, but they're not going to win the division. So we'll see what they look like next year. I bet they make some changes. And then there's this one. Justin Tucker's broken. I don't know how or why or what happened, but the expiration date was hit on him. He's missing a ton this year. And the Eagles took advantage again. And anything that is like in any kind of third and manageable, they are unstoppable. Saquon is, in my opinion, the MVP this year. And they might be the best team in football right now. They might be. And Sirianni would like to tell you they are. He'd like to point at the camera and make weird faces at you to explain to you that they are. But until proven otherwise, they kind of are right now.
It is such a cheat code to be in a close game in the third and fourth quarter in December and just go, simplify the offense, hand it back to that guy and just watch him work. And he did it again yesterday where he delivers a dagger to the Ravens. I'm not surprised. You and I were on this one too, where we just thought that the Eagles were going to eke this out because they're going to go to him. And that's exactly what happened. That's how it's been shaping out the last month here. And for the Ravens too, having this Justin Tucker situation in a year that you're a Super Bowl contender, that's like, don't want anything to do with that one because that dude's a Hall of Famer and you're going to have to address that problem. They've lost games because of him this season. Good luck with that. I don't want to deal with that one. Defense
is average at best. Kicker is now unreliable. And Lamar yesterday was doing the year 2, year 3 Lamar passes where he was throwing into triple coverage. He was wildly inaccurate. Like, that one might go sideways because they're clearly not going to win their division. So that one might go sideways on them. They'll probably make the playoffs, but who knows actually?
I think my favorite quote in post game of that one was Lamar in the post game said, "My mom cussed me out after the game saying I should have ran the ball more." And I'm like, yeah, dude, you should have run the ball because you shouldn't have been passing against that Eagles secondary. That Eagles secondary has been hyped up for the last 2 weeks. You shouldn't have been trying to force it against them. So yeah, they need to figure it out.
All right, we'll take a quick break. Bram wants to show ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. There are 3 stages of denial. There's disorientation, emotional numbness, and Eberflus. I know it happened on Thursday, which in news cycles was a long time ago. But the end of the Bears game was one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life because it's on Thanksgiving and because the entire country is literally watching it. So those who might have heard about the Hail Mary or saw the blocked kick against Green Bay, but weren't really watching it and don't really know the depths of how bad they have screwed up so many things this year. This was amazing. And I think my favorite part of it was Eberflus coming out afterwards and defending it, saying they handled it very well, which is, are you insane? Like, can you just admit, why can't someone just admit, we really screwed that up? I think it would have gone a long way. He probably would have gotten fired anyway, but at least it would have been honest, because to walk out there and convince yourself that they did nothing wrong when they had a timeout and let 30 seconds run off the clock without even getting a field goal off to tie the game, it's insanity. And you'd have to think that everybody around you is so stupid to believe something like that. That was, I mean, Have you ever seen worse clock management? I mean, there's been a lot of really bad examples, but I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. And I thought Nance was all over it. He's like, this is going to be a disaster. Like, as the seconds were counting down, like, what are they doing?
No, this was a game that, because it was Thanksgiving, I was only like half watching. But when the final drive is happening, you turn your attention to it. And I'm like, oh, are they out of timeouts? Let's go. No, there's one time. Like, my brain is going, what are you guys doing? You can stop the clock here. You can extend this game. I have no idea how that happened. By the way, too, I just want to say this. The Bears can't even fire a coach correctly. They let him do his post-game presser on Friday morning and then fired him at noon. Like, they can't even fire a guy correctly. And, like, I'm just so happy we're not that team anymore. Because, like, this is what this team used to do here. That was hilarious. And, by the way, on top of all of that, you know how this works in the news cycle. The second he was fired, the Bears reporters, Rossini, everyone dropped the hit piece of the players were screaming at him in the locker room on Thursday. Like, how did you not fire him right after the game? Like, it's unreal how much they botched this. And guess what? Now Caleb gets offensive coordinator number 3 of his career next year. Like, have fun with that. You guys have botched this whole situation for the past year. Not surprised. And like you said, for Eberflus to not even say, I screwed up, dude, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing at that point?
Not surprised that Cliff was linked to the job because of the relationship with Caleb that he had at USC. So we'll see if that works out. I did find this very noticeable that the Sporting News and then a couple of the Maryland people were linking Loxley a little bit to the job, which I had a hard time buying that he would get that based on the results. But still, that actually read to me, he's worried that he's not going to be at Maryland. And you know, I don't know whether he should be or should not be because I feel like he's safe contractually, but the results are just literally not there. So, you know, at some point, when does Maryland go, we have to be better than this? Because they're not even going to make a bowl this year. And so I always read that as people who are putting their name out there in advance. So I read it that way. And then I don't know if you saw the end of the Maryland-Penn State game where Loxley got all pissed off at James Franklin because James Franklin tried to score late on them, you know, and James Franklin was like, you kept your ones in. We put our 3s and 4s in. I'm going to let them play. Deal with it, dude. To which point I'd go, I agree with you. And to Loxley, who, listen, I like Mike. Everybody likes Mike. You know, I would say this for 3 years. At what point is the results not enough? And if it's not now, I don't know when it is, because when they had either the best or one of the best quarterbacks in the conference and the guy who broke records in the conference and they could get to mid-tier bowls at best and really couldn't win many big games, to not having him and being an also-ran, at what point do you have to consider it? And that's for you guys to figure out. I'll stay out of it. I'm just asking questions here. That's all.
I mean, you can attest to me. I've been out on Locke since like year 2. I don't like the results. I know he can recruit. Don't talk to me about that, though, because he can't win with his recruits. And I told you this. The worst thing that Loxley does is he wins just enough to get that bowl game, and he wins the bowl game. And everyone goes, oh, foundation's still being laid. Going into next year, we'll be okay. And it's the same thing every year. Well, you can't impress everyone when you don't even make the bowl game this time around. And you know how I felt about him. Nice guy. Not going to say that he isn't, but he does not have the formula down. He can recruit, but he cannot have them win on the field. It's never worked for him. So I've been the same way for these last 3 years. You know how I felt about Maryland football these past 3 years.
It's a longer conversation. Maybe I'll do it at a different point when they make a decision about him, because like he can recruit. You know, he came in and took over a program that needed him very badly. And I don't want to ever overlook that. And I do appreciate, you know, how devoted he is to this school. And so like all those things matter to me, but you do have to win at some point, and 4 and 8 ain't going to cut it. Yep. It just isn't. All right. Talk to you tomorrow. Bram and Callow, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.